everyone who has been wonderful enough to click on this video. So I'm going to tell you about the Google Cardboard and kind of my opinions on whether or not it's worth it if you have tried something like the Oculus DK2, which is what I've tried, and this is probably fairly comparable with the DK1 as it's pretty similar with just lower resolution for the most part than the DK2. So, first off, we'll talk about the just general packaging and things like that. I've got this broken up. I've got some notes, so hopefully I can keep my thoughts fairly organized here. So, the version that I bought was on Amazon. It was one of the ones that came with a stick-on kind of wrap around the back of your head headband thing. All in all, I think it was $8 or $9 shipped to my door with the headband and with some extra kind of foam padding to stick onto the side so that you're not putting cardboard directly onto your face. Most of these are between $8 and $12 on Amazon. So that's just a good general rule, about $10. So building the headset immediately out of the packaging, it arrived in basically just a big envelope, kind of clear envelope. Pulled it out and unfolded the cardboard, and there was my headset and everything. The directions were pretty easy to follow. It just basically said every tab that has a number on it, stick it in the hole that has the same number on it. Within a couple minutes, you have it all put together, and it has some kind of pull the double-sided tape off stuff to get it to all hold, and it feels really sturdy once you get it actually done. Fitment for me was fairly poor in the nose area, but I have a fairly big nose. As far as side to side, it was okay. Worth noting, I did just end up cutting the nose area out more, and it fit fine after that. And with me having the nose that I have, I do have a very big nose. I wouldn't imagine that you wouldn't be able to at least cut it out and make it fit without getting into the lenses. So fitment is pretty good, considering that it's made of hard cardboard that is mashed up against your face. Putting my phone in, though, I found to be just very bad fit as far as the phone. And my phone is a Samsung Galaxy S6, which is on the upper end of what they recommend for phone size. But every time that I put it in, I have to obviously remove the OtterBox. And I was hoping that this versus, say, like a Samsung Gear VR, I would be able to just throw the thing in there and kind of strap it down over it and go, but that just wasn't the case. I had to remove it every time I wanted to use it, and even then, my phone was sticking out on both sides and not secured inside at all, so I would have to kind of hold my hands on the sides of the Google Cardboard every time I wanted to use it. So you're talking about a $10 headset possibly endangering a $600 to $800 phone, depending on what you have. And that really sucks. You would think that they would at least sell maybe a bigger version or something like that for people with bigger phones, because it just kind of makes it feel a little bit cruddy, in my opinion, that it's so mashed together. And again, it's kind of the ghetto VR, but still. So, on to installing and setup. Basically, you scan a QR code after you boot up your initial Google Cardboard app that you'll find on the App Store. There's a QR code on the outside of the cardboard, and it says, oh, you have Google Cardboard version whatever, and then kind of loads everything up for that and loads a Google Cardboard demo app, if you want to call it that, or a demo video that kind of shows you just about 30 seconds of stuff. And then you boot into the actual startup app that is the Google Cardboard kind of, I don't want to call it a hub app, but it's just the thing that it boots into after you have scanned the QR code and everything. So immediately the first thing that I noticed is the image quality and lack of spatial tracking. Now, I did know going in, obviously, there wasn't going to be spatial tracking because you don't have that little camera that a DK2 has to track. And what I mean by spatial tracking is with an Oculus, you can lean in or back, and the head, your head representation in the application is moving in or out. Say you're sitting in a cockpit of an airplane, you can lean in towards the instrument panel to get closer to them. With this, you basically are just controlling a mouse pointer, kind of aiming the vision around. I didn't think that would be such a big deal, but it turns out that pulls you out of the experience more than image quality, more than 3D, anything. That is the most immersive feeling to a DK2, bar none. After having done this and after having tried like a Gear VR, I can tell you that is the best part about a high dollar headset is the spatial tracking. Image quality was pretty similar to a DK2, with the exception of the fact that you obviously don't have the crazy computing power. As far as sharpness, it was very similar, but the images themselves were obviously nowhere near the quality of, say, a DK2, but they were serviceable for what it is. So that was not, a deal breaker by any means. So for this demo app that you're booted into, there's basically a photo viewer, a thing that is like a tiki mask viewer that you're kind of just painting your vision around some tiki masks. I think they're trying to showcase a little bit of 3D there. And the photo viewer is just what you would think it is. You're kind of in a big black empty room with all your pictures on your phone and your videos, and you can kind of play those by pointing your vision at them. The coolest thing in this demo app is the Google Earth application, and I actually didn't even try that the first day I had this. I messed with the photo viewer and then download some other apps. We'll get to that later, but the Google Earth app is actually really neat. I would almost say that by itself, it's worth at least half the price of this thing for the few minutes that you'll try it. You basically can look into space, click your little side magnet thing that's on the side of these Google Cardboard headsets, and just shoot off into space, then aim anywhere on the planet and zoom back down to there. Now, granted, your internet connection will heavily vary what this works like for you, and it's pretty jittery and weird, but it's just a neat, novel, kind of dumb thing. I had my dad actually try it, and he thought it was really cool. And he's tried a DK2 as well. So that, as far as just, I don't know if the wow factor, I've never used that, but the wow factor of the Google Earth app was actually the coolest part of the Google Cardboard for me out of everything. So moving on to the actual App Store, and there is so much crap on the App Store. So I just started searching for some lists, top 10 Google Cardboard experiences, top things you need to try on a Google Cardboard. So after doing that for a good 20 or 30 minutes and downloading about 15 to 20 apps, it's worth noting that probably a good quarter of those just didn't work. Granted, I'm on Android 5.1.1, and there's some pretty well-known issues with 5.1.1 causing apps to crash and things like that, but still, a lot of these apps, 4 or 5 of the 15 and 20 that I downloaded just would not boot, or they would crash at the home screen, or they would boot but wouldn't boot into the dual split kind of Google Cardboard mode, things like that. So first thing I tried was horror games. Those are still scary as all balls. It's terrifying to have your vision encapsulated by nothing but the horror game that you're trying to play. I tried A Chair in a Room and a little game called Sisters, and something else that I'm blanking on what it was. A Chair in a Room is something that I actually tried on a DK2. It's pretty much just as freaky here, and that's the story with most of this horror stuff, is it's just as freaky on the cardboard as it is with like a DK2 if you have a good set of headphones on, and that's just because of the fact that you can't get away from it. It's a real weird feeling. A Chair in a Room really exemplifies that the most, because all you're kind of doing, without spoiling anything, is like you're stuck in a chair, like you're maybe a captive or something, and you have a flashlight that keeps kind of the battery dying down and then charging back up and then dying back down, and you're looking around and just kind of freaking out, and it could almost pass for like a mild torture device because of how quickly you will get super uncomfortable, even with Google Cardboard. So for the horror stuff, that's pretty neat. The only downside is that, as far as I could see, there are only maybe 3 or 4 really good, notable horror apps aside from just cheesy, dumb jump scare stuff. So that kind of sucks. Roller coasters were up next for me, and these really kind of pulled out all the major negatives to Google Cardboard for me. The biggest two, really the, I guess, two most meaningful things as far as making this thing not quite viable for me. The performance obviously is just not there. And I have a Galaxy S6. Like I said, that is the kind of Samsung flagship phone right now. I think as far as processing power and edge might be just a hair faster, but it would need to be quite a bit faster. These apps, and this was my big complaint with the DK2 as well, people are just trying to push it too hard. It kind of falls into the same camp as my gripe with console gaming versus PC gaming. I prefer frame rate. And a lot of these felt like they were running at maybe 30 to 40 frames per second. And if you've tried a DK2, you know that those are shooting for, I believe, a locked 70 frames per second to get it to feel smooth. And with the DK2, you can feel when it dips down to even, say, 62, 65. So this stuff running at 30 frames a second or so, you run into that major problem that a lot of people have with VR, which is motion sickness. And for me, I was not actually susceptible to motion sickness within a DK2 unless it was just extremely stuttery, but that had the spatial tracking, and I don't know if that kind of had something to do with it or not, but in this, most of these apps, including the roller coasters, I just couldn't deal with them for more than about 15 to 20 seconds before I felt like I was going to barf, and that is obviously kind of a problem. The next big thing is the 3D is just not there like it is even on a Gear VR. Gear VR's 3D is much more effective than Google Cardboard 3D. I don't know if it's the lenses they're using. I don't know what it is, but and it's still Gear VR is not quite say like Oculus 3D, but the Google Cardboard 3D is, I don't want to say non-existent, but it's pretty weak. It's not great. So that is another kind of immersion breaker sort of problem with this. And those two, like I said, you do one roller coaster. If you've done a roller coaster on a Gear VR or on an Oculus, it is immediately apparent that those two things are just leagues behind full-blown, headsets that cost 60 times as much. so next up were just some VR experiences. And you know what I'm talking about if you've done any sort of VR. These are things that you just kind of sit and watch and, experience in virtual reality. Now, there were, just as there are with the other VR headsets, there were some cool concepts. The most notable one for me was the North Face Climb. Just look it up. I think it's on Jaunt, Jaunt. And this is one of those applications. There's several for Google Cardboard that kind of are a hub for news outlets like the New York Times VR and stuff like that, to kind of get these little short expeditions or stories. Those are all really neat. The production quality and sharpness, obviously doesn't feel like it does on a full-blown headset, but for a $10 headset, these are really neat and were probably one of the top 2 or 3 things that I enjoyed with the Cardboard headset. The video quality seemed like it was an issue for these, and I don't know if it is that the 360-degree cameras that are currently being used just aren't quite there yet. For some reason, even streaming 1440p video onto my phone for these, which my phone does QHD, so I was just pushing the highest resolution I could on all this stuff, just because that was my biggest problem with the DK2 was the screen door effect. I wasn't getting the screen door effect at 1440p, but the video stitching was a big immersion breaker on these 360-degree video, things that aren't games, that are just 360-degree video. And you can find this stuff if you just go to YouTube and click on Cardboard or go to a 360-degree video. There's a lot of that being surfaced on YouTube right now. If you pan around with your mouse in a 360-degree video, you'll see the stitching everywhere. And that is, where the videos are being clipped together. And in a headset, that kind of hurts your eyes quite a bit. And that was another problem on the DK2, was just video stitching. But it's just one of the things that we're just going to have to wait for it to get there, because these VR experiences, once the stitching is taken care of, could be excellent. If it wasn't for the eye strain headache that is the stitching. Now, I can hear you typing. So yes, I tried, YouTube's 360-degree videos. So stop typing that hateful comment. These were pretty cool. But again, the stitching thing was a problem for me. I didn't feel like I got motion sick with DK2. With this thing, I just constantly felt sick. And that was because even on just streaming low quality 720p 360-degree video on YouTube, this headset was still lagging for me pretty bad. If you move your head very, very slow, you don't notice it quite as much. But even then, I was getting sick at my stomach trying to do this stuff. So that really was the biggest problem with any of the content here, is just the motion sickness I was getting from the lag. And that made faster motion things like full-on games on this thing almost just useless and pointless for me. So we'll move on from that to my other big pro with this, along with the VR experiences. My probably biggest pro was the theater in this stuff, using things like Cineveo or Cineveo, however you pronounce that. That was one of the apps that I actually paid. I think it's $10 for the DK2 version, and there's a free version for the Google Cardboard. And that is just a movie theater setting that you can kind of load your movie files into, or load your, not pirated movies into, and watch in a movie theater type setting. For me, once I got the comfort stuff taken care of, which I'll mention right here, was actually really cool and was actually better, believe it or not, than the DK2 movie theater experiences. And what I mean by that is because I am on a cell phone that is 1440p, um, I actually was able to get a sharper image than I did on an Oculus DK2, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, considering that the DK2 is, well, the DK2 was $370 or whatever, and then the Oculus, I don't know how that's going to work once it's out, but I know it's $600. Maybe it'll be sharper. Um, the big thing was that when I was watching some movies on this Google Cardboard, it was really neat to not have to be tethered to my PC. The one main time that I have to watch movies is at night after my wife and daughter are both asleep. If I want to watch a movie that I'm only interested in, that's typically when I'm going to try to watch something. And for me, being able to actually lay down in bed and recenter the headset to where basically there's a TV mounted on my ceiling, according to Google Cardboard, was a really neat experience. And this is going to sound goofy, but I actually took a Kleenex and just rolled it up and laid it on the bridge of my nose and then put the headset on. And by doing that, I could stand to have the headset on for well over an hour. And that was not the case with Oculus. That was obviously not the case with Google Cardboard. When you first get it, this thing is super uncomfortable without some padding on it. And like I said, mine came with stick-on padding for kind of the side parts, which you could also fix with, maybe gluing some Kleenexes or something. The whole thing is super ghetto. I mean, it's a cell phone stuck inside of a piece of cardboard that has some rubber bands and stuff on it. I mean, so I don't think putting Kleenexes inside the nose piece is out of the case whatsoever as far as the level of tech involved in the rest of this thing. So I guess that kind of leads me to my final thoughts and wrap up on this. So just to sum up, the 3D is much worse. It's, I don't want to say non-existent, but it's barely there. The stuttering made me sick a lot, so if you're susceptible to that, you may even just want to pass on this. Spatial tracking, I didn't realize until trying this just how much the spatial tracking added. So if nothing else, I think it's actually worth it if you are into things like Oculus. If you like Oculus and you own one or did own one, you've already dropped close to, if not more than $400 on a headset, so $8 to $10 is nothing. This is a really neat thing to just see and try for a day. I've used my Google Cardboard for all of, if you exclude the movie theater stuff, I've probably used this thing for all of maybe an hour and a half, and I felt like it was worth it. Just to see what it is and what it can do and the potential, just to keep up with the potential of VR. There's still a lot to be discovered and figured out as far as VR goes, but I do still think that that is a very interesting discovery process to kind of follow and keep up with, at least in the bits of it that I can afford to stay involved in, such as Google Cardboard and Samsung Gear VR. So let me know what you think if you've tried one of these, or if you have only tried one of these and not an Oculus. That would be something I would be very curious as to. I want to give this thing to someone who has not tried an Oculus or a Gear VR or anything, and just see if it takes them back whatsoever. If they're just like, that's kind of cool, I guess, or it'd be interesting. So let me know down in the comments. I love responding to you guys. I love the discussions that my Oculus DK2 video spawned. I'm kind of hoping this gets even somewhere near the realm of that. If not, that's no big deal. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. Thumbs down it if you didn't. Leave a comment as to what I did wrong so that I can try and correct it next time around. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.